To give you some perspective, I'm about 5'5". This tree was a 50-foot spruce tree, and if you follow me here, I'll show you the damage. It fell from this property onto the other property, hitting the woman's living room. When checking your mail, you may have opened a letter that looks a lot like this one, and that's a membership application for an air ambulance company. But is it the right choice? The man was driving on this road where it gets extremely narrow because of the snowbank. When he hit that snowbank, his wheels slipped, causing him to roll off this cliff about 30 feet. The detention center is so crowded that inmates have to sleep on the floor, and when there's not enough floor space, they then have to be released back onto the streets. It's a two-shot Derringer-style handgun that looks identical to the smartphone that we carry with us every day. The biggest thing for the brewers when making this porter was to keep it as traditional as possible, so they used this grain, which gives it that classic sweetness and color. The Lewis and Clark County Detention Center
Oh yeah, it's overcrowded, way overcrowded.
Is a 54-bed facility, sleeping over 100 a night. Tension between inmates is a constant stress for the detention staff.
They're frustrated because they don't have any space to themselves. They can't get away from each other. So we're in there putting out fires all the time if they're having conflicts with their cellmate.
Sergeants Scott Ferguson and Laurel Bolson have been working in the jail for over 2 decades. The two say they were disappointed when Lewis and Clark County residents voted against the new jail bond last November.
Because we're right back to step one with the overcrowding and people not getting their needs met, meaning the inmates.
When bunks in the 10x10 cells are full, inmates have to sleep on the floor. There's 2 beds on the floor and 2 beds in the bunkers, and I've only been here for about an hour, but what I can tell you is that it's very hot in here, it's very overcrowded, and you can barely even hear yourself think.
Very loud, very noisy. With overcrowding, you cannot hear hardly anything.
You know, the upstairs floods, so when it floods, it goes out on the floor, and there's mats on the floor, people are sleeping in it, so it's pretty bad.
In tight corners, a range of offenders sitting side by side.
We try to classify them separately, but yeah, I mean, there's times that we have to put felons in with misdemeanors.
With detention staff low, each guard tries their best to meet the needs of the inmates, from providing daily meals to supplying toiletries every week. It's a lot.
Because everybody needs something. Somebody's always running out of something.
Sergeant Bolson wants to remind county residents that a new jail is mandatory because these inmates,
They are family, they are neighbors, they are part of this community. And it takes a whole community, like we've said before, to make things better.
In Helena, Sara Stinson, MTN News. Those who have used an air ambulance tell me the service becomes a necessity when you're in a life or death situation. But the biggest surprise is returning home to a hefty bill.
I really didn't know if I'd be seeing her at the end of that flight. There were so many unknowns.
2 years ago this month, Amy Thompson went through the nightmare no parent should have to encounter. Her 2-month-old baby had to be air flighted from Butte to Seattle's Children's Hospital for open heart surgery.
That was our only option, was to get to Seattle as quickly as possible.
When time is of the essence, air ambulance is a necessity. But each case is different. Whenever someone's in this situation where they need to be airlifted, that time frame is called the golden hour because not only does it save lives, but it also costs a lot of money.
Just over $30,000. My portion of it would be roughly, pretty close to $10,000.
Ron Pecorina could not feel anything from the waist down. Doctors at St. Peter's ran some tests to see what was wrong.
3-4 hours later, they said, "You're flying out. Where do you want to go? Great Falls or Missoula?"
Pecorina's insurance paid for 70% of the air ambulance costs.
The biggest shocker is the mandatory, you have to pay the difference, whatever your insurance does not cover.
A battle Thompson says you can fight. After 3 appeals with her insurance company and 2 complaints with the state insurance commissioner's office, Amy Thompson won.
It was a long ordeal, and I would just hope that people don't give up and just immediately pay in. I do feel like there's a process. My complaints with the state ended up pushing Pacific Source and Airlift Northwest to negotiate.
Just 3 days after returning to Montana from Seattle, the Thompsons were surprised when they received their air ambulance bill.
Shock, shock, I guess, first.
It came out to $56,000 her insurance company offered to pay just the liftoff fee.
Was $13,000, leaving us with $43,000.
From then on, she says it was a game of finger pointing.
Between insurance and Life Flight Company both saying it was the other's responsibility to decrease that cost. And in the meantime, by the way, it's on you to pay for it.
Thompson recommends 2 major strategies. 1, never give up in this process, and 2, contact the Patient Advocate Foundation.
They can provide guidance and assistance, particularly on making appeals.
Air ambulance services have become a major topic for the Legislative Economic Affairs Interim Committee. During one of the committee hearings, Thompson told legislators that her story has a happy ending, but she said in some cases tragedy is piled on top of the economic burden.
There are families that don't bring their babies home. And instead of having this constant reminder of a smiling child looking at them, they have a bill that they're paying every month to remind them of the precious gift that they lost.